She thought no one was watching. In the quiet shadow of a millionaire's mansion, a black cleaning lady bent over, her tired hands trembling as she shielded her daughter with Down syndrome from a world that often looked at them with cruelty instead of compassion. To the millionaire, she was invisible, just another worker. But in that one fragile moment, hidden truths about dignity, sacrifice, and unbreakable love would collide with the cold arrogance of wealth. What he witnessed was not what he expected. It wasn't weakness he saw, but unimaginable strength. And that moment would shatter every prejudice he carried, forever changing the way he saw her, and himself. The mansion stood like a fortress of privilege, its glass walls glistening under the morning sun, each reflection a reminder of power and wealth. Inside, everything was polished to perfection, marble floors, chandeliers, furniture that cost more than most families earned in a year. Yet behind the immaculate shine, someone moved quietly, unseen by the guests who came and went, unnoticed by the man who owned it all. Her name was Angela, a black woman whose entire life had been a series of battles no one ever applauded. Every morning, Angela arrived before dawn, her daughter Maya by her side. Maya was only 9 years old, born with Down syndrome, a child who carried both innocence and burdens far too heavy for her small shoulders. Angela couldn't afford expensive daycare, and so she brought her daughter to work, praying no one would complain or ask questions. While Angela scrubbed floors and dusted shelves, Maya would sit quietly in a corner with her coloring books, humming to herself, her presence both a comfort and a risk. The millionaire, Mr. Harrington, had built his empire on ruthless efficiency. To him, time was money, and people were assets, replaceable, interchangeable, unimportant. He rarely looked at the staff. In his eyes, they were part of the furniture, just like the tables or rugs that decorated his home. But one detail set Angela apart, even though he hadn't yet noticed it. Unlike the others, she wasn't simply working for survival, she was fighting for something greater, the dignity and future of her child, and though no one yet realized it, the paths of this powerful man and this unseen mother were about to collide in ways neither of them could have predicted. Angela's days were long, her body carrying the weight of exhaustion long before the sun had even risen. Yet she never complained. Her strength was quiet, almost invisible, the kind of strength only a mother learns when she has no choice but to keep going. Still, beneath her calm surface, she lived with a constant fear of being judged, of being dismissed, of losing the only income she had to protect her daughter. The mansion wasn't just her workplace, it was a symbol of everything she didn't have. Expensive paintings lined the walls, pieces worth more than her lifetime earnings, while Maya's crayons were broken and worn. The pantry overflowed with imported food, while at home Angela carefully stretched every dollar to ensure her daughter had enough to eat. She cleaned up after banquets where leftovers were tossed into the trash, meals that could have fed her and Maya for weeks. Every time she saw food wasted, or luxury ignored, it pressed against her heart like a silent injustice. Maya, though cheerful by nature, often attracted stares. Her condition made her different in ways the world didn't always accept. Sometimes staff members whispered, questioning why Angela brought her child to work. "It doesn't look professional," one supervisor muttered once, thinking Angela couldn't hear. But she had. And she had felt the sting of those words deep in her chest. She wanted to scream that Maya wasn't a burden, wasn't something to be ashamed of, but she stayed silent, swallowing her pride to keep her job. What Angela didn't know was that Mr. Harrington, the millionaire himself, had begun to notice her, though not in the way she might have hoped. He saw a woman who moved with urgency, who shielded her daughter from curious eyes, who carried herself with a dignity that seemed almost defiant. To him, this wasn't humility, it was insolence. He wondered why a cleaner seemed so protective, so guarded, as though she had secrets he wasn't entitled to. In his world, employees were expected to be invisible, but Angela refused invisibility. The tension began to grow when one afternoon, during a high-profile business meeting at the mansion, Maya accidentally wandered into the main dining room. The polished executives, all dressed in expensive suits, paused when they saw her. Some exchanged confused glances, others smirked, whispering under their breath. Angela rushed in immediately, pulling Maya gently back, her face burning with embarrassment and fear. She apologized quietly, but the humiliation lingered in the air like smoke. Later that evening, a senior house manager warned her, "You need to keep your daughter out of sight. Mr. Harrington won't tolerate distractions." Angela nodded, her lips pressed tight, but inside her chest something cracked. How could anyone look at her child, a child with a pure, open heart, and call her a distraction? What no one knew was that Maya's presence was not just about necessity, it was about survival. Angela had already faced too many nights when her daughter's heart condition required medication they could barely afford. Leaving Maya alone at home wasn't just unsafe, it was impossible. And so, she endured the whispers, the judgment, and the subtle racism that followed her like a shadow. Mr. Harrington, however, remained curious. For the first time, he found himself watching, not the deals being signed at his table, not the numbers flashing across his phone, but the woman who polished his marble floors with such determination. He didn't understand why, but something about her defiance unsettled him. He had power, money, influence. Yet here was a woman with none of those things, and still, she carried herself like she had something he lacked. And soon, he would find out exactly what it was. The day that changed everything began like any other. Angela arrived early, clutching Maya's small hand, guiding her into the kitchen's back entrance. She carried her cleaning supplies like armor, preparing herself for another battle of endurance. But destiny often hides in ordinary mornings, and that day was no different. Mr. Harrington had arranged a charity luncheon for elite investors, a performance of generosity designed to impress. The irony was sharp, millions pledged for causes he barely cared about, while the woman scrubbing his marble floors was struggling to afford her child's medication. Angela worked silently, moving from room to room, keeping Maya tucked away in a quiet corner with her coloring book. She hoped, prayed, that no one would notice her. But fate has a cruel way of testing the strong. As the guests filled the dining hall, Maya's curiosity got the better of her. Hearing music and laughter, she wandered out, her small figure moving between polished shoes and glittering gowns. The room fell silent for a moment as heads turned, their smiles fading into puzzled stares. Whispers began, low, sharp, cutting. A few guests exchanged knowing looks, others raised eyebrows. Angela rushed forward, her heart pounding, pulling Maya back protectively. Her voice trembled with apology, but the damage was already done. One guest chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. Another muttered, "This is why standards matter." Each word landed on Angela's heart like stones, suffocating, breaking, crushing. And then came the voice she feared most. Mr. Harrington's. Cold, commanding, his eyes locked on her with disapproval. For a moment, Angela thought she had lost everything, her job, her only income, her fragile security. But instead of scolding her, he paused. His gaze shifted from Angela's face to Maya's wide, innocent eyes. In that instant, he saw something he had never noticed before. The child clutched a crayon drawing, two stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. One was clearly Angela, the other was Maya. Scrawled above in uneven letters were the words, "Mommy protects me." The room's whispers continued, but Mr. Harrington heard none of them. His chest tightened in a way he didn't understand. For the first time, wealth, power, and status seemed meaningless. Here was a woman everyone dismissed as invisible, yet her love burned so brightly that even the cruelty of the world could not dim it. It struck him harder than any deal, harder than any loss he had endured. This wasn't just a cleaner. This wasn't just a child. This was courage, this was sacrifice, this was humanity at its rawest and most beautiful. And in that moment, his world cracked open. For several long seconds, the room remained frozen. The millionaire's hand tightened around the edge of his chair, his mind caught between the cold expectations of his world and the raw truth that had just been placed before him by a child's drawing. Around him, the investors shifted impatiently, waiting for his judgment, ready to see the cleaner humiliated, dismissed, erased from the scene like she was nothing more than dust on the marble floor. But something inside him had shifted. He remembered his own childhood, lonely days in an empty house, parents who never looked up from their business meetings, and a gnawing hunger for affection that no amount of wealth could ever buy. In Maya's smile, he saw the love he never had. In Angela's protective embrace, he saw a mother's courage that money could never purchase. Slowly, he stood. The whispers fell silent. The atmosphere changed. Without a word, he walked toward Angela and Maya. His polished shoes echoed across the marble floor as every eye followed him. Angela braced herself for the inevitable, her arms holding Maya close, her heart pounding with fear. But when he reached them, he did something no one expected. He knelt in that moment, power humbled itself before love. He looked at Maya's drawing once more and realized that the true wealth of this world was not in his bank accounts, not in his sprawling mansion, not in the fleeting admiration of men in suits, but in the unshakable bond between a mother and her child. The luncheon ended differently that day. The millionaire didn't announce profits or pledges. Instead, he announced support for families of children with disabilities. He created a fund that very afternoon, shocking the very men who had come to measure his worth in numbers. Some called it weakness, others called it foolish. But to Angela, it was a glimmer of justice, a recognition she had never expected. Life did not suddenly become perfect. The struggles did not disappear. Angela still worked, still fought battles unseen, still carried the weight of raising a child in a world that too often misunderstood her. But something had changed. She was no longer invisible. Someone with power had seen her humanity, and through her, had been forced to see his own, and for those who witnessed it, the image of a wealthy man kneeling before a cleaner and her child would never leave their memory, because the truth is this: dignity does not come from status. Strength is not measured by wealth. It is found in the quiet sacrifices of mothers like Angela, in the laughter of children like Maya, in the courage to keep going when the world tells you to stop. So ask yourself, how many lives do we overlook every day? How many people do we dismiss because of their skin, their struggle, or their circumstance? And what would happen if, just once, we chose to look closer? Maybe we would realize that the greatest wealth we could ever possess is compassion.